A lot of what I'm looking for is, it's not necessarily the new screens that are out there, it's ways to collect data and get information from the screens, and connecting the data that's out there using the software that's driving the screens that can use that data and manipulate the content automatically on the existing screens I have. And so what I'm able to do is take all my previous year's investments and leverage them and get more out of the investment that's in place, and then I can take that up the chain, and whenever it comes time to buy new screens, which it will be soon, is I can use all that data and all those analytics that are there now. I just have to collect those analytics. I get those analytics, I can study them, and then I can share that data, and it's meaningful data to the people who are making decisions on how large a budget I'm allowed to have to go buy new screens. And so I'm able to utilize the technology that I'm seeing out there on the floor, and it may not be the screen technology, but it's everything that's back of the house to help me justify more screens, newer screens, sooner. Well, I wouldn't say we did a test, but we didn't do it all at once either. We put in a 72 screen video wall, but we've also, over the years, we've added more screens and more locations. We doubled the screens on our back, because I work for an airport, we doubled the screens on baggage claim to make them bigger and brighter for the passengers, so the content's easier to see. We added larger, I believe 70-inch screen, or actually 80-inch screens in the concourses to replace some of the static signs we had. It was finally at a size that it could do that very, very simply. But what I need now is I need to be able to demonstrate how those screens are being looked at, and how that's being tracked, and take that data that these are actually, passengers are engaging with these screens visually, and then use that to justify more or replacements whenever it comes time. New attendee, whether it's an attendee or whether it's somebody on the booth, is listen to what the needs are, the people that you're interacting with. There's one booth that is focused on providing sound to people who are looking at screens through an app. And I remember seeing them at last year's show, and they had a very small kind of entry-level booth. And so having the opportunity for people to come in and demonstrate their first-time products in a really, without all the capital that you need to do some of the bigger floors, it provides them an opportunity to get in place and to listen to what the needs are. Because my needs when it comes to sound, I've got some very specific needs to sound. We're going to have sound. None of our screens that are in our terminal have sound intentionally on them. Some of them have sound, but they're not supposed to, so it's not quality sound. But none of it has sound intentionally, but we're going to add sound, and it's either going to be built into the system, or we're going to do something that allows people to have sound through their device. And so, just talking to the different vendors, they're listening to what our needs are. They're still selling their product, but it's important to listen so that whenever it's time to make the purchase, we're getting something we can actually use over the next several years. It depends. It depends on the type of screen we purchased, and usually at the time of purchase, it's how long is this going to be a 365-day a year screen. So if it's an interior screen, it's it's an LCD, an LED LCD, or it's an external. We have some direct view LEDs. The life cycles are very different. We really look at each one of them individually. If I was going to give you an average for anything inside, I'm averaging 7 years is what I forecast out in the budget. Sometimes one of the reasons I need the data is if I want to accelerate the purchase of the next one, I just want to say, what, I want to replace at the 6-year mark, because we need to make sure that the experience doesn't degrade quickly. And if we degrade at the end of life, I'm always concerned the end of life is going to be sudden, and I'm not going to be able to plan it out. And the way our budget cycle is, sometimes it's better to come in at the year 6, do it at the tail of the end of the year 6 versus middle of year 7. And so 7 years for inside. Exterior LEDs, they're not wild, they're different in their time, and they're based upon hours, not as much as what we're doing on the inside. So I had heard someone tell me like 100,000 hours on an outside screen, which is a very long time. But again, we're running different levels of brightness in different parts of the day. So I'm still looking for the expertise there. I've talked to a couple people. I've got to make sure, are these specs, or are these sales pitches? And so I've got to, discern that on my own, talk to some consultants on the outside. But, having that connection here, talking to them face to face really helps. Whenever I'm looking at analyzing when I'm going to replace a screen, is I have different. If someone's paying money to be on an advertising screen, I want the quality. They deserve to have the absolute best quality. And so I might be able to I might go for a 6-year replacement on something that is an advertising screen, but maybe a 7-year replacement if it's a less mission critical screen. Definitely we're looking at repurposing. One of the things I'm most curious about repurposing would be hardware. If some of our hardware, the mounting hardware, it's not obsolete from a technology standpoint, but maybe there's something that meets our needs better, and if we could resell or repurpose that hardware, we could reposition that hardware in the terminal somewhere where it makes more sense for that location and bring in new. And so it's not necessarily the screens where I'm looking to repurpose, it's the back of that house stuff. And because it's, mounts, they have a cost and they add to the capital of a project. And if I can take the cost down on something else, again, that's not mission critical, then I'm definitely ahead of the game. Engage third parties to develop the content. We have we use Omnivex software, so it helps us develop some of the content. But then there's most of the other content we're contracting with third parties to produce for us, or we have somebody in house that'll produce content. But they're just different levels of quality depending on how much you spend. If you're a facility owner, there are things about your facility that more likely than not people will find interesting. I'm lucky that I work at an airport, and the airport has interesting things going on everywhere. Right now it's no longer interesting watching a snow plow. It was earlier in the year, but it's still an interesting activity to the casual visitor, the person who flies through once or twice a year. They get to see what a snow plow on the runway looks like. And so we have mid advertising entertainment showing a snowplow on the runway, or just showing an aircraft taking off, or even we put a camera on a bag as it goes through our baggage makeup system. So just an interesting point of view about what the dynamic is going on, and whether or not you're an airport or you're a shop that makes donuts, there's something, you're watching somebody make a shake, someone's going to find that interesting. A little 20-second clip, it's running in the mix. Then you can have your menu promotion, and people can see more about what's going on. We had a new system put in, and the manager, I had the camera in my office, and he's like, "Can I put this on?" I said, "Go for it, man." Now he had to cut out parts of it because there's some of it's secure information. We can't let people know what it looks like, so it goes dark for a while. But just seeing all the other stuff, it's a different point of view that no one ever gets to see because we don't travel that way, thankfully, yet maybe. My challenges go back to data. It's the same. It's a challenge that's always there. Is if I'm going to invest money, I got to make sure I get a return on my investment, return on my opportunity. Am I getting the return that I anticipated? And the decision makers want to see that return, and I need that data to validate it. I know it's there because I see it. I see it from the revenue standpoint. Revenues are increasing faster than our employments are increasing. And so we see that separation, we see that validation. I just need one more set of information to provide to support what we're going to do next.